Huh?
I'm going to go ahead and record, so we'll get started.
All right.
Holly, you got someone?
Yeah, he's coming.
Okay.
Look at, say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's your new Boy Scout, Colton.
All right. All right. That was a good.
Congratulations. Thank you.
That was a Boy Scout thing to do right there.
We got to
Yes, it
pump the
was.
enthusiasm up a little bit, but
What's that?
got to pump the enthusiasm up a little bit, but
Well, that was his
Good.
first time. He's a little nervous, I
a little
think.
nervous.
He
Yep.
gets a little shy sometimes.
Got to
Little
remember
stage
too.
fright.
Got to remember too. He's been in school, so they've told him how evil the conservatives are. So he's probably a little scared.
No, he hasn't been in school. We yanked him.
Oh, all right then. Fair. Am I sharp or am I blurry, or is that just my eyes?
Just your eyes.
I'm good.
Not blurry.
All right.
Only your
Could be-
50-year-old eyes, Jim.
Could very well be my eyes, man. We're gonna get that all taken care of though. All right, so we'll get on to it. Listen, real quick, for those that are here that just came in, I do want to mention, Renee, how many are we at?
We are at 15, not counting the two of us.
All right, so I just want to mention real quick that I had actually
14.
posted this link on my page, and it got absolutely zero traction, which is weird because most of the posts I put up, I'm getting 50, 60 likes, a lot of comments, and this got zero reactions, zero comments, like nobody saw it. So I have a feeling it's probably me because I've been very outspoken the last week or two on my conservative views, and I just wonder if Facebook is throttling me. But if we could all maybe do us a favor, do the group a favor, I don't think posting it on our pages is going to work anymore, making it its own post. But when you see news articles, things like that you're posting that have to do with the Constitution, maybe tag the group in it. Leave a comment if people are, want to get more educated on it, and then just tag the group, and maybe we can get some people that way, because I think, the comments on like the news feeds aren't being throttled. I mean, people are still seeing those. It's a standalone post. So I just want to try to get the word out there. Corn Festival got canceled this year, so I don't know what we're going to do. It's going to be a little tough.
Maybe that'll party and Daniel will be home.
All right.
Hey, just so you guys know,
Girl, I don't know.
Jax is still on the baseball field.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Not just my phone.
It's
That's why
okay.
I didn't get on, and Bella.
That's
And
okay.
that's-
All right.
But I'll get on as soon as he's done with practice.
All
Okay.
right. All right. So getting on to the Fourth Amendment tonight. Of all of the amendments, for me at least, I feel like this is the one that protects individual liberty and privacy the most. They're all important, right? Freedom of speech is important. Certainly the second is important, but the Fourth Amendment is what keeps the government out of your day-to-day business. And tonight, I guess I'm more comfortable with this topic than I am so far with any of them that we've done, because for 28 years, I have lived the Fourth Amendment. I've been working around it. I've been up on the case law. And it's funny, when I started and when young guys start, we're always looking for ways to get around the Fourth Amendment, not illegally, but all the tools that the Supreme Court gives us, right? Whether it's righteous or not. I guess the way we look at it is, our job is to get the bad guys off the street. There's so many protections for the bad guys that we're going to use whatever the Supreme Court gives us. Now, I don't know anybody personally that has purposely busted somebody's Fourth Amendment rights. And sometimes it happens just through ignorance, through changing case law, through whatever it is. But as time goes on, you start to realize that how important the Fourth Amendment is, I guess. Now, there's still times, don't get me wrong, well, I'll use a pretextual stop when I know somebody's dirty, and that's just 28 years of experience telling me somebody in that car is dirty or something is going on. And so I'll use a taillight stop in order to talk to them. And if I can arrest them for something, then I'll use the exceptions to the Fourth Amendment that we'll talk about. But for the most part, I try to stay out of people's business now. All right. I've let plenty of people go that I just have it in my gut. There's one that I always think back on. It was a couple years ago. I was sitting up on the crossover right at 480 and the turnpike, and it was a Georgia plated car. And there were two girls in the front seat and one guy in the back. And when they went by, nobody looked. Nobody even glanced at me. And there's nothing saying you have to. Nothing says you have to wave at the police. But you know what? When you take the totality of the circumstances in on the thing, most people at least look at you, right? Or they do this, where they look down to see how fast they're going. Nothing. Everybody's staring straight ahead. Georgia plated car. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see what this is all about. Now, I've only got a mile and a half or a mile to do it because they're heading eastbound. So they're out of North Ridgeville within a mile. So I got behind them, and it was turn signal city. Everybody had their seatbelts on. We were doing 64 and a 65. Everything went perfect. They drive out of the city. I'm like, I know they're dirty. I just know it. I know it. I know it. I pull up next to them. They just kept on driving straight ahead. Nobody looks at me. I come back around. I get on the other side of them, pull up. I'm looking at them. I hit my air horn a couple times. Nobody looks. I get to Stearns Road. They go on east. I get off. And as much as I wanted to stop them, I had no reason to stop them. Right. So I got to look myself in the mirror and I let them go. Just knowing that, somebody will catch them down the road, or, there's other cars.
I bet there were some pee stains in that car.
No, I bet. They were dirty. They were dirty for sure. I think about it whenever I give a talk about the Fourth Amendment, or I talk to anybody about it, that is always the one that comes up to my mind. But I can look at myself in the mirror. I didn't create a reason to stop them. I didn't make up a reason. I didn't use some bullshit where they're, weaving, or they touch the center line, or, what, they followed all the rules and they got to carry on. And that's the way it should work. Now, when I was younger, what have I employed tactics like trying to make them, maybe following them too close, maybe, I don't know, trying to get them to do something, maybe, but I don't know. So
Shine your
anyway,
headlight in their side mirror. So yeah.
right. You know what?
Yep.
Well, and
That
the
happened to
honk
me.
and the horn is always the good one, man, because, when you honk that horn, everybody goes, what the hell does this guy want? And these guys, nope, nothing, not even the backseat passenger. So, but anyway, so tonight I come at this from a perspective of law enforcement where I am handcuffed sometimes by the Fourth Amendment, but I come to it as veteran law enforcement where I appreciate the Fourth Amendment and I'm never mad about it, right? Sometimes I'm frustrated, never mad. So I'll be able to talk a lot about the exceptions, why they're there, whether I agree with them, I don't agree with them, but that's it. Does anybody have any questions or any comments right now? All right, I guess we'll move on. So what the Fourth Amendment says: the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So we're going to break it down into two parts here. First part, we've got search and seizures. The second part, we have warrants. In the first part with search and seizures, well, a little bit of history on this real quick. So where this came from, where the Fourth Amendment came from, and and I've learned a lot doing this. I had no idea where the Fourth Amendment came from. It's just always been there, right? It's always been in the Bill of Rights. When I went through the academy, I was told it was there, and these are the rules we follow, but nobody tells you where it came from. So back in the 1760s, pamphleteers used to make pamphlets on various topics, and they would come up with some pamphlets that were anti-crown, right? They were pro-independence, anti-crown, and it was basically the social media of the time. Obviously there wasn't social media for them to post on, but they would make these pamphlets and they would just hand them out to anybody who wanted to read them. So back in 1760s, I can remember what the guy's name is here, Wilkes. And so Wilkes was a pamphleteer. and he was pro-independence, very critical of the crown. And the crown did not like that, and they ended up issuing a general warrant for all of Wilkes' pamphlets. And what a general warrant was just that. It was by any means get his pamphlets. So they would go to Wilkes' house, kick in his door. They would take all of his pamphlets, the one that offended the crown, plus all the other ones. But then they would go to Wilkes' friends' houses, and they would go to anybody's house who they suspected of reading the pamphlet, looking for the pamphlet. And they would come in your house and they search your house, and they would take the pamphlets and whatever else they deemed evidence against the crown. So there were a couple cases like that. And once we got into the constitutional conventions, this was one of the things that they brought up. And we'll talk about the warrants. But the second part of this is particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. They wanted to get away from general warrants, which I think is probably a good thing, right? That's how we ended up with the fourth. Questions, anything before we move on? Discussion, anybody have anything?
Not
All right.
yet. I think my stuff will come later with the Patriot.
Well, maybe. I'm pretty good at answering your questions before you ask them.
Yeah,
Me and you are
Patriot
usually on the
stuff
same wavelength.
coming.
All right, so moving on, into search and seizures. So the first part of this, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Again, with the shall not. This is not the should not. This is not the if you can help it not. This is the shall not be violated. So what is a search? And a lot of this is going to be a more contemporary conversation with how we're going to apply the Fourth Amendment today. All right. You got to remember when the Fourth Amendment was written, policing was a whole lot different. Policing was reactive. There weren't police departments in every little village. There were what they called night watches that were just citizens out there. They had their major laws, and if you stole somebody's horse, then, you would be arrested for that. But they did not necessarily have policing like we know it today, like we know it today, where we are more now, instead of a reactive, we are more into crime suppression, crime deterrence. We are a proactive police department, and every single city, every village, every county has their own police departments. So for today, what is a search? And how can you assert these rights today? So there's two things. One, there's two tests that need to be met. If the government trespasses onto a person, his house, his papers, or his effects with the intent to obtain information, U.S. versus Jones, 2012. The second part of this is it violates a subjective expectation of privacy, Katz versus U.S. 1967. So anytime the government, and when we say the government, we don't mean obviously Congress or anything like that coming in. Your police department is the government, right? We represent local government. Your state police represent the government. FBI, DEA represent the government. And any time that the government trespasses onto a person, meaning a search of yourself, houses, papers, or effects with the intent to obtain information, and you can read that as evidence, it's a search. And also that it violates a subjective expectation of privacy. Now that's important because things like trash pulls, right? The police department and the courts have upheld, once you put your trash on the curb, it is fair game, okay? There is no expectation of privacy for trash that you put on the curb now. So police departments will routinely pull trash, especially when we're doing drug investigations, and we're looking to build up enough to get a warrant for a house. Maybe, we're seeing evidence of methamphetamine production. We're seeing evidence of cocaine distribution, whatever the case may be. Expectation of privacy goes as far as, first off, does anybody know where you have the greatest expectation of privacy? I mean, where would you think?
Medical.
Toilet room, bathroom.
Well, okay, that's probably fair. But
Home. On
It
your
would be your
person.
house. You
Your house.
absolutely
Yeah.
100% have the greatest expectation of privacy in your house. And when courts are looking to give us search warrants, houses are the toughest to get. Cars, there is some expectation of privacy in a car, but not nearly as much as a house. Apartments, while you live there, there is less expectation of privacy because we can get into common areas in the apartments, right? I can get into a hallway right outside of your door. And you get down into motel rooms. While you do have some expectation of privacy there in a motel room, the second you check out of that motel room, it's fair game. So, and we've developed cases on that, where as soon as somebody leaves and they check out, we will go in and tell the manager or ask the manager. Usually hotels are pretty cooperative, and say, look, we'd like to go through that room before your cleaners get in there. And anything left behind that may implicate you in a crime can be used, because now you have no expectation of privacy. Anything in public, you have very little expectation of privacy. Schools, you have very little expectation of privacy, right? They give you a locker, and we'll talk about this, but there's another type of warrant, which is an administrative warrant, where schools are allowed to go through kids' lockers. Your employer can go through your locker. Your employer can go through your desk at work. We can't, right? So typically what we do is, if the schools call canines in to search, at least our department, we will not do the search. All we will do, they're using us as a tool, and we will tell them, look, dog hit on this locker, you do with it what you will. The schools will usually search it. If they find anything, then they will take action, and sometimes we will take action. Just kind of depends on how it was phrased and how we're, if we direct you to go into locker number 10 and we stand there while you're searching it, we kind of direct the search. Now you've become an agent of the police, and that's going to get burned every time in court. But that's an administrative warrant. Questions right now on what constitutes a search? Do you have questions on maybe something that happened to you, family members? How do I feel? Now, keep in mind, I'm only got 28 years of experience with law enforcement and enforcing this. I'm not an attorney, right? I'm not a Supreme Court justice. I work within the bounds that are given to me, but you might have
What are effects?
effects or anything you own, basically. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, anything that you own, your wallet, your, whatever.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood
Yeah.
that covered all the personal items other than the two things listed.
And there's obviously the Supreme Court's, nothing is litigated. I don't think, I would guess, at least in my experience, nothing is litigated more than the Fourth Amendment. I have far more suppression hearings than I do anything else, which is where they're trying to suppress evidence because of Fourth Amendment violations. Now, it just seems to be the go-to. Doesn't mean I violated anything, but an attorney just likes to throw whatever he can on the wall and see what sticks, right? A lot of time they'll do these suppression hearings knowing that the search was on the up and up, just hoping that they get a sympathetic judge.
Yeah. You were talking about cars not having a lot of privacy. So I'm curious, if you were investigating somebody and they parked up at Walmart or something, can you just walk by the car and take a look in the window?
Sure.
That's
Sure.
not so under plain view.
Yep. It falls under plain view. As long as I am in an area that is open to the public, and we'll do that quite a bit, right? We think something's shady and two guys park their car at Speedway and they walk inside. I'll pull right up, get out, walk around the car. I don't touch the car. I don't manipulate the car. If I look in
What
that
about
car,
at a house?
well, now see, that's different because the house also includes the curtilage, right? So that means the property surrounding the house. You own that property. I cannot come up and peek in your windows. That all day is going to be a search. That's going to be a Fourth Amendment violation because I am on your property at that point in order to obtain information.
So question, when you say public access to the public, so all those parking lots, Mark's parking lot and so forth, those are all considered private property though, because
They are, but they're open to
on
the
there,
public.
but they're open to the public. Okay.
There's a big difference between private property, like your private property, right, that
Yes.
you own, and private property that is open to the public.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
So,
if
yeah.
someone pulls up they park on the street in front of their house.
Yep.
Because it's on the public street though, that's where you can actually like peek in their window, right? Because
Fair
they're on
game.
a public street.
In the car?
Yeah.
Yes.
If
Absolutely
they
fair
park the
game.
car on the street, it's fair game. Okay.
Absolutely fair game. Right.
Hey,
Now,
Jim,
the courts have, yeah,
as far as like garbage and stuff like that goes, I mean, obviously if it's on the curb, most cities consider an easement and it's city property.
mhm.
Does Ridgeville have easements everywhere all over the city?
What do you mean?
I don't have sidewalks.
Right.
Where
Yeah,
is-
you know what,
do I have
usually
an
it
easement?
is, what the easement is, and I don't know the exact feet, but for Ridgeville, an easy reference is anything between the street and the telephone poles. So wherever, now, if you're on the other side.
Right, which I am.
Right, right. No, there is. There is a certain easement there on every road, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. Surely curbside falls within that. Falls within that area. There are times where we will pull trash that if we don't want to, obviously, if you're cooking meth in your house and you look outside and you see a car pull up, grab 2 bags of trash, throw them in their trunk and take off, you're going to be like, right? So what we'll do is if it's a big enough investigation, police departments will actually get with the trash companies, have them go out with an empty truck, pull up, pull that trash, and then they will take that trash out of there. Obviously, you see why we can't do it with just a truck that's on the route, because
Right.
an easy argument to that would be
Right,
wrong bags.
it's not mine. Right, it's
Yeah,
not
wrong
mine.
bags, man. So we have an empty truck, pull up, grab the trash, go down the road, then we take the trash from them there. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we will, sometimes we'll just pull up at 4 o'clock in the morning and grab the bags and take off real quick. Try to be all slick, but yeah. So anything else? What was I gonna
Yeah,
say?
I got one.
Yeah.
So you pull somebody over and it's step out of the car and stand over here and the door is left open. Are you
Mhm.
allowed to go into the car then?
Well, we're gonna get into that. No. I can't just go into a car. And we're gonna talk about probable cause and what all that is, but I stop you for just say a simple speed and I have you step out of the car and you leave the door open.
Sure.
No, I can't go in your car, right? They're plain,
But you could see a gun laying on the floor
Sure,
in the car.
plain view,
something like
plain view.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Now I've got enough to at least start questioning whether or not you have a CCW permit, whether you have,
What if she smells like marijuana?
well, now, see, plain smell used to be a thing. Ohio has effectively legalized marijuana because they legalized hemp without any carve out at all. So hemp and marijuana smell too much alike for us to be able to use plain smell anymore. It used to be, if we could smell marijuana, yeah, it was game on. Plain view, same thing. You leave the door open, and we're going to have to get into reasonable suspicion and probable cause for you to understand all of this. But you leave the door open, and I see an orange needle cap on the floorboard of the car. Now, is that going to be necessarily enough for me to start searching your car? Probably not. Does it give me reasonable suspicion now at this point to detain you and start a drug investigation? Probably, right? Because I can say that the high 99% of the cars that I stop don't have orange needle caps sitting on the floorboard of the car. Even if you're diabetic, it's not the norm. So, but we'll get into that here in a second. So any other questions on what constitutes a search? And if you do later on, as we go, just make a note and interrupt me. All right. So, the second part of this is the warrant clause. And that is no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So we talked a little bit about the history, about how this came along, and where am I at here? Okay, so now we're going to get into probable cause. So what's important here is that the warrant has to talk particularly about the places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So if we get a search warrant for a house and we are looking for a stolen log splitter. All right, does everybody know what a log splitter is? Big, huge piece of equipment, right? And we're looking for a stolen log splitter. And they give us the warrant for the house, and that is the item we're looking for to be seized. That now prevents us from going into drawers, your dresser, you know, looking under your bed. You can't fit a log splitter under the bed. And that is how detailed these warrants get. So there will be times that we'll get a warrant for, say, an outbuilding. You know, we usually get them for, depending on what we're looking for the house and all. And you can't say all outbuildings, but, you know, we'll look at Google Maps. We'll say for the house and for the garage and the yard shed out back. And then we get there and there's a second yard shed. Well, that yard shed's out, right? The one that we actually showed them on the warrant application, that's okay. The other yard shed, we would have to go back and get another warrant. Now, if they gave us one for the whole property, they probably are going to give us one for that yard shed. But if we were to just go in that second yard shed without getting it detailed on the warrant, anything we find in there is out. We're not going to be able to, and it's called fruit of the poisonous tree. So what that means is that any evidence we seize illegally, any rest of the crime that we prove because of that evidence is also out, right? So if we end up finding some evidence, it leads us to a second house. We go to that house because of this piece of evidence we illegally seized, and we find the mother lode, this is it right here, boom, slam dunk case. Then we get to court, fruit of the poisonous tree. Evidence A was bad, therefore everything else is out. And that's how it works. And that's why we got to be so careful.
I guess so. If you were served a warrant, you know, you're at your house and they hand you a warrant, you can go through, or are you as a law enforcement officer required to spell out what you're allowed to go into? Or is that something that I need to stand there and read and make sure that you're within your bounds? Or
typically what we'll do is give you a copy of the warrant.
And then start searching.
and start searching. Now, if it's something like drugs, we're tossing the whole house, right? Because you can put drugs anywhere. So the warrant will it'll spell out that we're looking for narcotics equipment, and to include the entire house, garage, and cars therein, or something like that. But then we're looking everywhere.
Gotcha.
So what type of detailed list, let's say, you know, like when we have a shooter that goes off and kills 15 people, and then the FBI goes in and searches the home, what type of items do they list on their warrant for probable cause? Or is it pretty generalized?
Well, and there are some instances, and we're going to get into the exceptions for exigent circumstances, where sometimes they'll go over there without a warrant and they'll just start going through the whole house. And that's if, you know, say they believe that there may be somebody else involved. There's a shooter that's out there on, you know, one guy kills himself, and they think there's a second one out there, and they're worried that this is going to continue. There are times of public safety that they can go in there. Exigent circumstances, they don't need a warrant, and they're allowed to go in under emergency circumstances. Something like that, though, my guess is that they would be looking for weapons, they would be looking for computers, they'd be looking for manifests, they'd be looking for written documentation, they'd be looking for you know, anything that could explain what just happened, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
That's my guess. I don't know. I've never been involved in a mass shooting. And really, we're not involved in this stuff too much anyway, as patrol officers. I mean, we'll go to serve the warrants, but we're not involved too much in the application. That's the detective bureaus and the prosecutor's office kind of walk you through it, and then they go to the judge, and the judge gives you his yay or nay. So, all right. So we talk about probable cause. And what is probable cause? Quick definition on it is that it's more than a possibility, but less than an absolute certainty. All right. So, which is a pretty good definition, really. It's, well, we'll go on here. So in Brenniger versus US 1949, Supreme Court defined it as information that would lead a man of reasonable caution to believe that an offense has been or is about to be committed. And that's really the standard right there. It's not what the police think, it's what a person with ordinary sensibilities would think. And that is probable cause in a nutshell. So I'm trying to think of a good scenario here for probable cause for you. I mean, well, first off, the dogs. The dogs have been proven in court, proven time and time again, and they are accepted as being very reliable when it comes to sniffing drugs. And we can prove it through our training records. So a dog who alerts on a car does give us probable cause to search that car. When he alerts to the outside of a car, his nose is so much better and proven effective that establishes probable cause for us. And I think most people, if you're driving by and you see a dog scratching on the side of a car, what's the first thing you think? Right? I mean, everybody thinks the same thing, right? Oh,
He wants to go home.
got the dope, got the dope. That's what everybody thinks, right? So a person with ordinary sensibilities sees this dog alert and you're not even the police and you're like, oh, that guy's got dope, right? Let's see. Well, I don't know. I mean, probable cause. Let's say we have a shooting, right? We have a shooting. The car is described as a blue car, missing one hubcap. We see a blue car coming, missing one hubcap. We stop the car. Does that give us a right to search that car? What do you think?
I would think so. I mean, it
Pretty
fits
good.
the description, right?
Fits the description. But is
Especially if
it
missing a
possible
hubcap.
that a blue car, another blue
With it-
car could be missing a hubcap?
There are so many blue cars. I don't think that could be considered probable cause.
Right. And I would agree
Yeah,
with
but
you,
missing
right?
a hubcap though, I mean, that'd
Sure,
be one hell of
sure.
a
And I think that
coincidence.
absolutely gives us reasonable suspicion to stop that car, right? Now, reasonable suspicion is lesser than probable cause. That's just a normal person saying, look, yeah, I think that was probably the car. Okay, well, it probably was the car, so we can stop the car. Now we go up there and we're talking to these guys. And now if we get them fleeing the scene, it's a whole different thing, right? But I'm talking, okay, so we're talking 20 minutes later, half hour later, whatever, I see the car. I go up there and I'm talking to the guy. And while I'm talking to him, I see an empty casing sitting on the back seat or in the floorboard.
There you go.
Now we're getting to probable cause, right? Now I have a blue car missing a hubcap who apparently, allegedly was at the scene of a shooting, and I have an empty shell casing sitting on the back seat of the vehicle. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Now we're going to get you out. Now we're starting to establish our probable cause. Questions about probable cause, and I mean, it's hard to explain it in 10 minutes to you because there is case law after 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 case law on it. And you know, something like that with the blue car will absolutely go to suppression. It's just, the Fourth Amendment by far is the most litigated right that we have, for sure. Anything on probable cause? Any questions on probable cause?
Stephanie still has her hand up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my
Yeah.
question isn't probable cause. Mine goes back to the house.
Yeah.
So not that I have this issue at all.
Look, I just want to say I don't cook meth, but if,
But if it was in my house, no, the question is that if, like, let's say I was having a problem or something and I called the cops, but you guys stayed outside. If you guys were to come inside the house, is it like game on? Like if you see something laying out or something, is it, not that I was ever a problem child, but like I was always told, like, cops stay outside. You don't ever have them come in because once you invite them into your home, then it's like it's fair game. Like if they see something laying out, if something's sitting there.
Well,
To
then
a
I would
point.
think then it becomes a plain view case, right?
Well, it
You're
does,
invited into
to
the
a
house,
point,
it's plain view.
to a point. Yeah, we don't have the right, just because you invite us in and you invite us in the living room to talk to you, I don't have the right to go back into your bedroom. I don't have a right to walk through the house. I don't have a right to go in the kitchen, right? But if you invite me in and I see either contraband or evidence of a crime sitting in plain view there in the living room, then yeah, it is. Now it's a whole different, now it's going to be a whole different contact for sure. I think you guys will be surprised here at the end of this thing. I will tell you my feelings on dealing with the police. And again, this comes more from a constitutional standpoint. As I got older, I realized that it's the Constitution above all else for me. And sometimes that means that guilty people get away for now, right? We'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just was curious. It's like, I know just being careful as to like basically who you invite into your house, you know,
Yeah,
not that you've
trust
got
me,
something
when
to
I-
hide.
And we've talked outside of here, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of people notice when I talk to them, especially when I'm working, I'm talking and my eyes are always darting around. I'm always looking at everything, right? When I'm working. And it's definitely the same in a house. If you invite me in the house, there's very little eye contact going on. I'm looking past you. I'm looking down. I'm looking at your coffee table. I'm looking, you know, and I'm
Looking
looking
at the
around.
shotguns laying on the floor.
Right. Well, and I really, because I go in there and I'm looking for weapons, make sure there's nothing can hurt me. But then, you know, as I'm looking around, all of a sudden, then, you know, I see a mirror with a razor blade on it and white powder lines. Okay. Well, no, okay. Shit. I mean, hide your shit. I mean, why are you inviting me in your house and you got a bunch of cocaine sitting on your table? You know, I mean, if you're going to invite the police in your house, what's that?
Because they're higher than a kite.
Yeah, right. It always amazes me. I'm like, man, if you're going to invite the police in your house, at least hide your stuff, right? Put it under the couch. Do something with it.
Trying to see if you're dirty or not.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
No, I just was curious. That's all. I just, you know, as I also heard, like, you know, keep it outside, keep them outside. Not that, again,
Well, you know, and I guess it depends on what the situation is, right? If
I've
you
only
call me
had
be-
2 police officers in my house that were in dress uniforms, and it was because I couldn't take whatever I needed out of the house, so they had to come in.
Well, and it depends. It depends. Like I said, it depends on the situation. If you're the victim of a crime, you're the victim of a theft, invite them in. I mean, whatever. But if
Right.
you are even remotely the suspect of a crime, I don't know, man. I might be, if I'm going to talk, I might be talking outside with my front door closed, personally.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
All right. So, yeah.
Just it to that end, you use the example of cocaine, but in Ohio now with so much legal and so much borderline, do cops care anymore if there's, you know, if they walk into a house, they're invited in for whatever reason, and there's a joint sitting there?
Okay,
does
so
anybody
I would
care?
say this, a whole lot of cops and a whole lot of courts don't care anymore. But
some do.
for you to invite them in and leave something that is still an illegal substance on your table in front of them, or to think they're not going to do anything, and you know you're smoking in the house and it's just it's a big haze when we walk in there, you know, that is the same as somebody who says who passes me on the highway at 74, 73 miles an hour, drives right by me, and then when I stop them, they say, well, I always heard you guys give 10 over. Well, shit, what? And you think I'm joking? That happens a lot.
It's 9 over.
And I'm like, what?
I thought
are
it
you
was
talking
10%.
about? I'm like, what? Renee, let's not even talk. Apparently,
I
we're-
teach my kids, they can go 9 over.
no, you do not want to teach them that, because the state trooper will stop them and will give them a ticket for 9 over, depending on where they are. You know, a lot of the cities are 10 over. Some of them are 15 over. I would not be teaching them that anything is safe, especially with a trooper.
I think on 90, it's like 30 over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of courts that won't even hear cases anymore. It's been decriminalized so much. But I still wouldn't, you know, and we're going to get into this stuff. So the problem is that if you leave an illegal substance out, and that cop decides he wants to do something with this, right? And he arrests you for that. Now you're going to fall under the exception of search incident to arrest, which means now he can go through everything around you, drawers, under the couch cushions, search you, your purse if it's sitting there. And that is all search incident to arrest. So why you would ever want to open yourself up to that is just crazy. I would never take that chance until it is legalized.
Okay, so let's say you go into somebody's house and you're like, I really got to pee. Can I use your bathroom? You go in there and you find a needle and a spoon.
Mhm.
Is that? I mean, there's.
Yeah, I mean, if they give you permission to go in there, it's.
But I mean, it's a needle and a spoon. Is it? How do you know it's drugs? Could be an insulin needle.
Listen, okay, it could be, right? But I've got probable cause now at this point because people don't usually cook their insulin in a spoon. So if I have a needle and a spoon, I got burn marks on the bottom of the spoon, I have probable cause to believe that there's probably a crime afoot. Now, if I really wanted to push it, I could probably get a warrant. I don't know if they would give me one for the whole house. Typically, what's going to happen there in that case is that we are going to take the needle and the spoon, if we're going to charge them, probably leave you there and send it to the lab. And once it comes back from the lab that yes, it's heroin, then we're going to come back with an arrest warrant. But again, every situation's different. Am I going to worry about a warrant on a house where it's a user? If a guy's trafficking in heroin, he's going to be a little more careful. So, but yeah, I mean,
Well, he
consent.
certainly wouldn't be allowing you in the house if he's trafficking heroin.
Correct. And consent always negates the Fourth Amendment. Always. You can absolutely waive any one of your rights, right? You can waive the right to self-incrimination. You can waive the right to your Fourth Amendment. If we stop a car and we don't have any reason at all to believe that there's anything going on in there, or we only have reasonable suspicion and not probable cause, and we ask you if we can search your car and you say yes, and we go in your car and we find a loaded gun with a whole bunch of cocaine, well, now you're hit. So yeah, consent always negates the Fourth Amendment. You will have no suppression issues. You will have well, I shouldn't say that, because even on consent, they try to suppress it, saying that they were coerced or whatever the case may be. But yeah.
So the consent does not have to be in writing and it's hearsay, or does it have to be on your?
No, it doesn't have to be in writing. And it used to be hearsay and we used to be trusted a lot more. But the tide has turned where we are the bad guys and the bad guys are the good guys now. So it's kind of a weird thing in court. But almost everybody has body cams. So we will have some record of it. I would always, at a very minimum, have a second guy with me when I would ask for consent so that we both heard him give consent. And there's multiple reasons for that. You can withdraw consent to search anytime, right? So if you give the cops the right to search your car and they're in your car and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I got a dead body in the trunk. I totally forgot that I killed my girlfriend and she's in the trunk. So then he comes out of the car and he's going back towards the trunk. You can say, we're done. I don't want you searching anymore. And that's where the search ends, right? Now, cops might decide, you know what, we don't care, we're going to keep searching, and they find the dead girlfriend. But remember, we talked about, that evidence is going to get thrown out, and any evidence that is discovered because of that will get thrown out. So that's second reason I always have somebody there, is because we do secure that person in the back of the car, back of a cruiser while we're searching, just because I don't want to get in a fight. I don't want to get in a gunfight. I don't want to, while I'm searching a car. So we do have them secured, but we have the window down and we have a guy standing back there with him. And if that guy says, look, I just want to go, I want this search to stop, then the guy back there with him will tell me, hey, search is over, and away you go on your way. Now, the second that one illegal thing is found in that car, you lose the right to withdraw consent. That turns into our search then at that point. All right. So if we think that there is something fairly significant going on in there and you give us consent to search, now play devil's advocate here, and you are the police, right? And somebody has given you consent to search a car. Where's the first place you're going to search? Very first place, beyond all
Glove
else.
compartment.
Probably glove box.
Under the seats.
The trunk.
Center console.
I'm thinking glove box.
The trunk.
So, well, and I guess it depends. It depends on what you're looking for, right? The very first place though, that I would go when I am looking for anything illegal, I would open the ashtray first and I would go to the floorboard second, because all I'm looking for is one seed or one stem of marijuana, and this becomes my search. Am I worried about one seed or one stem? No, but it's illegal, and that now becomes my search, and you can't withdraw consent. So you give consent, boom, I open up the ashtray, there's a bunch of seeds in there and a roach, bam, my search. Now you don't have any say. We put the window up, second officer comes up, and we start searching your car.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, and that's the way it works. Now, I'm not trying to give a class on how to get out of this, but what I am trying to do here is make sure that
Help people clean their cars.
you know your rights, you have the right to say no to a search. And there's some people that are like, look, I'm not hiding anything. I have nothing to hide. You can search my car. Okay. That's fine. And plenty of times I've searched cars and not found anything. And I shake hands with the guy and thank him for his cooperation and send him on his way. Right.
So I'm a good guy, and I say, yeah, go ahead and search my car.
Mhm.
And I'm a CCW carrier, right?
Sure.
And you don't find a gun in the car, but you find a loaded magazine.
Mhm.
Does that send up red flags?
Not at all. Right. So first off, you're not required to tell me that you are a CCW holder unless you have a gun. It says nothing about magazines, and it is not
No, I
illegal to possess a magazine or to possess bullets. It's illegal to possess a
What if, it doesn't-
firearm.
what if the loaded magazine
Is what? No, you're breaking up. All right, give it a mile. Give it a mile and get back to me.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I will.
All right.
Well,
All
I
right,
mean, a
so-
CCW pops up when you run the plates anyway, right? You usually already know that they have a CCW.
Yeah, but that's not what the law says. Law says you have to notify, because you're not required to notify me if you don't have a gun. So even though I see it, it doesn't necessarily mean you're armed, right? So that's what the law says. We talked about the Second Amendment a couple weeks ago. All right, so examples, contemporary examples of searches right now. And things are different, right? So cell phones and other digital media. The government does not have a right to go through your cell phones when they stop you or when they're investigating a crime. They have to get a warrant. You don't have to give them consent to search your cell phones. You don't have to give them consent to search your laptops. Now they show up with a warrant. And you know what? If he's going to go through your cell phone on the side of the road without your consent, let him. That is not the time to take it up. We'll take it up in court. We'll take up the Fourth Amendment issues in court. But cell phones, digital media, and that is all stuff that the founders, the framers could never have thought of in a million years, right? When they're talking about papers, I mean, they were talking about deeds, and they were talking about pamphlets, and they were talking about, different writings. They could not have even imagined cell phones. It's ridiculous. Breath and blood testing, that's another one. And especially for the younger generations, or when you're at college, right? You're underage, you're at a party, the cops show up and they're like, hey, blow into this. Well, that's a search. You don't have to submit to that. They won't tell you don't have to, but you do not have to submit to that. Now, caveat to that would be blood testing, breath or blood testing when it comes to an OVI, right? If you get stopped for OVI, you don't have the right to refuse. And if you do refuse, you're going to be cited for the refusal. That is a criminal violation. When you sign to get your license, it's implied consent that if you are ever stopped for it, that you will submit to a breath test. So the penalties are stronger. If you are found, even if you're found not guilty of the OVI, you will still be suspended for the refusal. In a perfect world, some judges don't do it, but you can still be suspended for the refusal, even if you're not found guilty of the OVI. So this isn't, don't take what I'm saying here like, breath test, I can refuse it. It depends on the circumstances. And social media, that is a big one now, right? Where you don't have to give your login credentials. Now, here is the thing with social media. Anything you post on social media, even if it is only to your friend group, is fair game. And the courts have ruled time and time again. All it takes is I post something and the cops go to Chris and they're like, hey, you're friends with him. Would you mind showing us what his post says? And Chris is like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm not in any trouble. Shows them all the stuff I wrote on there. And the next thing you know, they're knocking on my door with a battering ram, right? Now, I mean, you got to be careful about what you post, obviously. But I can tell you right now that we solve a whole lot of crimes because criminals are stupid, right? How many times do you see in the news where these guys have posted stuff? How about the guys that stormed the Capitol? Bragging about it, putting these videos on there with them inside the Capitol, talking about how they just walked right in, and they're taking pictures of a guy with carrying the podium and his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk. And I mean, come on, man, how stupid! You just did their job for them, and that's how they found a lot of these guys. So unless you have something that is strictly, you can lock things down, right? You can put a post up, lock it down, nobody gets to see it, which I don't understand what the point of that would be. But if you do it, or even if I shared something and then I'm like, oh man, I don't want to get rid of this, but I think this is stupid. I probably shouldn't have posted this. So then I just lock it down. Now they can't demand your credentials from you, right? They can ask, you can say no, and they can get a warrant. And once they get a warrant, then Facebook's going to comply. And, Facebook is very good at not just giving your information away. But if you show up with a warrant, they're giving them everything. They're giving them your account information. They're giving them your email address. They're giving them your name. They're giving them private messages. Private messages aren't safe. And even so much so that, me and Chris are private messaging back and forth. I delete all the private messages. Chris doesn't. Now they're still on a server somewhere. Yeah, I mean, anything you put on social media, it's
Even
tough.
if you delete them, they're still there.
They are there for at least 14 days, I think. Is most of them.
Shit.
Exactly.
So my question earlier about the loaded magazine in the car without a gun, and you do have a concealed carry.
Yeah.
I was told at one point that a loaded magazine is considered by the state as a firearm.
It's definitely not a firearm by definition.
Okay, and suppose you are pulled over, or suppose I am pulled over, and that's all I've got in the car. Yeah, go ahead and search it. But I got pulled over for weaving, and they suspect me for OVI.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a problem? Does that compound the problem because of the loaded magazine?
No, a loaded magazine is not illegal. It's not a weapon.
Okay.
It's not illegal to possess bullets. It's not illegal to possess a magazine. What is illegal is to possess a firearm when you're drunk. But,
For sure. Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Right. But having a loaded magazine with just bullets,
okay.
No, man, you're safe. Now, I can't speak for every state, right? I mean, New York, I know that they got some wonky ammunition laws there. You got a magazine with 12 rounds in it, just sitting in your center console with no gun, and you're going to jail.
Right.
So,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm only speaking right now for Ohio. I can't. Those of you that are out of state, I don't know. You're gonna have to look up your own laws. So yeah. So let's talk about the exceptions real quick. The exceptions to the Fourth Amendment. So there's exceptions to everything, right? Supreme Court, they have to hear all these cases, and sometimes they rule for us being the police. Sometimes they rule against us for being the police. And I guess you can take that the opposite way. Sometimes they rule us as Americans, or rule for us as American citizens. Other times they rule for the government. These exceptions are all accepted. And they're still in use today. And I use them. I do. And there has to be exceptions for us to be able to do our jobs. When I say us, I mean the police. There are criminals out there, and we catch a whole lot of them on traffic stops. Well, we'll just get into the exceptions here. So what are the exceptions? First, we have exigent circumstances. So what exigent circumstances? There's no warrant needed when doing so is practically impossible because of the risk of evidence being destroyed, or in the case of imminent danger should the police not act, right? So I don't need a warrant to go into a house. When neighbors call us and they say, hey, I think my neighbor, I think there's domestic violence going on at my neighbor's house. And we go over there, and before we knock on the door, we can hear yelling and screaming inside. And we hear the husband say, "You bitch, I'm going to kill you. I should have killed you a long time ago." Well, let me tell you something. We're not backing off. We're not knocking on the door, and we're not waiting for a warrant, right? We're going to kick that door in, and we're going to go in there. We're going to separate them before he kills her. Same thing where, we're in a house and we're talking to somebody, let's just say consensually, or even outside, like Stephanie said. So we're standing outside and we're talking to you and we're like, "Hey man, the neighbors think you're cooking meth." That's kind of weird. I mean, this is a nice neighborhood. I don't think you're cooking meth, but are you cooking meth? And then we start hearing a bunch of glassware clinking inside the house, and we hear a toilet flush. Well, now we have reason to believe that you are destroying evidence. We don't have time to wait for the warrant. We're going to enter the house and we're going to go and we're going to seize that evidence and we're going to protect the scene. Now, once the scene's protected, we're going to need to get a warrant for the rest of the house. Just because we hear glassware clinking and we hear the toilet flushing and we find some stuff doesn't necessarily mean that we can go into your bedroom and start going through your drawers. But that does give us the right to go into the house in order to preserve that evidence.
So is it
Yeah.
no harm, no foul if someone's being clumsy in the kitchen and someone's just flushing the toilet because they were going to the bathroom?
Sure.
Like,
And it goes back down to that reasonableness of the common person, right? And we do have good faith. As long as we are acting in good faith, the courts are usually on our side. So somebody's just being clumsy in the kitchen and it happens to flush a toilet and we go charging into that house and we don't find anything. Well, we're going to dust you off and we're going to graciously back out of the house and, "Hey, sorry, we thought," I mean, you get it, right? That's how it's going to be. Even if you sue us, chances are we're okay as long as we're good faith. Now, there's always a joke when I got hired is that if we want to get into a house, we would knock on the door, we'd send another officer around to the back to an open window, and we'd knock on the door and somebody would open the door and they would yell, "Come in." And we'd be like, "Oh, well," or, then we'd walk in the house, or somebody would yell, "Police, I need help." And then we'd come running in, right? When really it was just a cop on the other side yelling through an open window. There, we would get it shoved up our ass, right? Because there is no good faith. We're trying to buck the system and we're trying to get around it. But yeah, I mean, as long as we're in good faith, we show up at your house for domestic and something on the TV and we're just at the right point at the right time. And somebody's like, "I'm going to kill you, bitch." And we go storming in the house and the husband and wife are just sitting on the couch watching TV. Well, here's what we were outside. Okay, hold on. Hear me out. So we were outside and then we heard this on the TV and sorry, take care. Have a good night. That's how it's going to go. But we're probably all right. Your neighbor calls and says, "Hey, I think my neighbor's being assaulted by her husband." And we get there, we don't hear anything. We just boot the door and come in. Trouble, big trouble, right? We don't have the right to do that. And we'll try to build. We'll try to build a case, I mean, obviously we're not just leave. We're not going to ring the doorbell and then nobody answers and we leave. We get there first and we're going to listen for a little bit and we're going to see if both cars are in the driveway and we're going to, we'll look through the windows, see what we can see because we're legally allowed to be there at that point. We're responding to a call to a crime of violence. So yeah, I mean, we have things we can do, but I mean, imminent danger is imminent danger and evidence being destroyed is evidence being destroyed. There's no way around that. And I've only done it once and it was a domestic. We got sent up to apartments and that's exactly what happened. He said, we heard him tell her that he was going to kill her and we opened the door and he actually had his hand on her neck and was pushing her into a chair. And we opened up the door and grabbed him, tackled him and arrested him for domestic violence and it stuck. He got convicted. But that was just one of those things where we're not going to wait outside for him to kill her, So any other questions on exigent circumstances?
did we touch on OVI checkpoints?
We did not. We can. You know what? Actually, it's 9:00. Do you want to save exigent circumstances for next week? Or do you want to go on through it now? Because it's probably another half hour, to be honest with you.
That depends. Are you guys planning on having any OVI checkpoints this weekend?
We should probably talk about that one next week.
Yeah, I mean, or not
Yeah,
exigent
let's do next
circumstances,
week.
but I have 6 solid exceptions. So it will probably be another half hour, maybe longer if
Yeah.
we, all
I
right, I'll
think
tell you
we,
what.
I think we go to next week.
Okay, so why don't we do that?
That'd be good.
We'll pick it up with exceptions next week to the Fourth Amendment. We'll go over a brief overview of the Fourth Amendment, and then we'll talk about what the exceptions to the Fourth Amendment are. Does anybody have questions up until now? About,
Only who's the anonymous user that just joined?
what's that?
Only the anonymous user who just joined. Who is it?
Boogie, boogie, boogie.
Hey,
Must be Jeff.
was it Jeff?
Boogie, boogie, boogie.
I do have one with the Patriot Act, right? Because this is a big one, right? So I think of the FISA courts and all that, and if you could potentially give just kind of a brief overview of how that's different and how our rights aren't being violated with the Fourth Amendment under the Patriot Act. Or if that's-
You want to talk about that right now, real quick?
Well, I mean, unless it's covered under exigent circumstances.
Well, I was planning on talking about it with that. Listen, in a nutshell, yeah, I mean,
Just a little teaser,
absolutely.
Jim.
Move
Huh?
to the right a little, Jim.
Now I
Just
got
a
it.
little teaser for next week.
Yeah, I mean,
Patriot Act, from what I
absolutely.
understand, that's a long discussion.
It
so-
is a long discussion, but absolutely 100%, I believe that our rights are being violated by things like the National Defense Authorization Act and Patriot Act and things like that. They are spying on American citizens without any probable cause, they're able to obtain secret warrants on
Hey,
American citizens.
Can I step in here? I know I just jumped in, but did you hear that the FBI is using NICS to spy on gun owners, not like lawful gun owners? Yeah, there's a leaked ATF document that the FBI is keeping tabs on people who have been run through the NICS system.
Mhm.
And so if you get run through NICS and you pass, they're supposed to delete your record gets
Okay,
deleted
so-
after 88 days.
So let me
And
ask you this.
In
does
that 88
anybody-
days, they're using that to get your
Does
information. in.
anybody truly believe that there is not a gun registry in this country?
Oh, there totally is.
Right. Does anybody believe that there's not? I mean, clearly the government is keeping tabs on who has guns. They know every gun that you own, which is why they are so focused on this gun show loophole, right? Because they don't want private sales because they can't track who owns what now at that
Right.
point.
That's why I sold all mine. Sold them all, gave them away.
I know. I bought. every
And we're
one of
gonna
your
go on
guns.
vacation with all that money, right, hun?
Yeah, well, I bought all of his guns and then I put them on my boat to take them home and well, the damnedest thing happened. So, all right, so.
I was actually surprised when I went and allegedly bought a shotgun at a gun show a couple months ago. And I'm like, do you need to see my ID? And he's like, no. I'm like, I was really surprised. I guess it's like with shotguns and handguns, shotguns and rifles, you don't need to provide ID or anything like that. But
Well, private
shotguns
sales, you do not.
or handguns, you have to have a background check. But I mean, I'm like ready to give this guy all my information to buy a shotgun. He's like, no, you're good. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Private sales, you don't though. I mean, I could sell you a handgun and I don't have to do it. Now, if I'm selling to somebody I know, I'll give it to you. However, if I'm selling it to somebody I don't know, I always go through an FFL.
Okay.
Yes, I was gonna say, you have a responsibility as a gun owner to know to whom you're selling
Sure.
a gun. I
Sure
mean,
you do.
yeah, if you're doing a private sale, you better know that person, trust them, or like Jim said, go through an FFL.
All right. So in a nutshell,
Right.
I do believe that the Patriot Act is absolutely unconstitutional. And we can talk about that next week. But, it's one of those things. And that's why we're here to learn. We're here to learn what the intent was of the Constitution, what the framers believed the intent was. Just because the Supreme Court has ruled one way or another on something doesn't make it right. Right. It's all about what the intent was. And we've allowed the Supreme Court to legislate from the bench for too long. And now that's why we're half in the mess that we're in. Right. The other half is that we keep electing the same jerks. So, but we could talk about that next week when we talk about the exceptions. The exceptions might actually take up a full week. So, yeah, we'll just pick up then.
All right.
All right. Good
Stop the
deal.
recording.
I posted
Yeah,
that
I'll-
article in chat if
I will-
anybody wanted to take a look before they got up.
Oh, you know what? I will open that in a separate window so that I have it. Yeah. I will see you guys over in the post then, and I'm not going to be there long because I got stuff going on tomorrow.
Great session,
Yes,
Jen.
you do. You
All
do have a
right.
lot of stuff going on.
Well, good.
tomorrow.
I'm glad. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit here.
Yes,
So,
it's very nice to get your perspective as a police officer.
well,
I
got
mean,
another
to be able to explain it all to us so we understand it like a reasonable person would.
come over to the post and I'll give you a perspective. All right.
All righty, bro.
All right. See you guys over there.
All right, I'll
Bye.
post it
See you
in
there.
the page.
Okay.
See you guys soon.
Yep.